Welcome to Mob Talk Sitdown. I'm Dave Schratweiser.
And I'm George Anastasia.
George, Joey Merlino's podcast, Stirring the Pot. The boss of bosses passes away in Italy, and the 20-year upcoming anniversary of a mob hit in South Philly.
Yeah, one of the cold cases and one of the things that never goes away.
All right, George, Joey Merlino's podcast, The Skinny, is really stirring the pot around town here. Getting a lot of views. Your thoughts on the first month of this so far?
Well, I mean, it's pretty slick. It's well put together. And the question is something we've talked about before is, can he sustain it? I mean, we're talking about handicapping sporting events. You can go on forever with that through hockey, through basketball, etc. The question is, you know, the anecdotal stories that he tells that attract viewers, how long can he sustain that? How long can you keep talking about rats before it gets old? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, the numbers are pretty good. He's approaching 100,000 on the last views on YouTube on the last episode. He's got 30,000 Instagram followers in the first month and about 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. Those are good regional numbers, not really good national numbers if you look at the big podcasts, that kind of thing. But he is generating a following.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's a charismatic guy, and I think it's reflected in the broadcast. I think one of the things that's happened is it's one of those deals where he sat back and he sees what he perceives as rats, the cooperators, Sammy Gravano, Michael Franzese, to a lesser degree, Panisi, John A. Light. They're all doing this, and he assumes they're making money doing this. Mm-hmm. And I think basically he said, why should they make money and we don't make money, we being the real wise guys?
Yeah.
And I think that's what might have driven this, in addition to, you know, everybody wants to make money. I think that's part of it as well. And it can get old. I mean, if you look at Gravano, if you look at Franzese, sometimes they struggle. We know from doing this show.
Yeah.
Content, where are you going to get content? You know, you can't do it. We could never do this every week. There's not enough going on. So, as I said, you can talk about history, you can talk about old time stuff, you can talk about everything that happened. At a certain point, there's a line between providing information and starting to sound like a whiner.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, not everything is rigged. Not every case was, I was persecuted. You got to be realistic about it, and I think most people are realistic about it. There's a fine line, and sometimes he comes up to that line. We'll see.
Interesting. He kind of went after Jerry Capisi, our friend at the Gangland page up in New York, and Capisi fired back, called him a crybaby, a whiner, a complainer, and kind of lit him up a little bit in his column there. I haven't heard any retort from Joey at this point, but I'm being told you're going to hear more of that. If he keeps stepping towards people, they're going to step back.
Well, that's that old saying, you never go after somebody who's got a printing press. Back in the day, you talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, again.
Now it's a camera.
Right, exactly. Everybody's got one. You pick your spots, and the bottom line in all of this is, are you being sincere? Is it something people want to hear? I mean, and like again and again and again, it's going to come back to, where else are you going to go beside vilifying the rats? One of the things that Gravano can do, Franzese would say he wasn't a cooperator. The school's out on that in terms of who you're talking to, whether he was or wasn't. But they can talk about things that happened. Gravano can talk about a lot of stuff that he did, because it's beyond the point of implicating himself. There are things Joey cannot talk about, or if he talks about, he's running a risk in terms of, because of what we said before. There's still some unsolved murders here, and there's always a group in law enforcement. I know this for a fact. There are guys in law enforcement that are fed up with all these guys, the whole Merlino crew.
Yeah.
And they basically believe those guys have gotten away with murder.
Yeah.
And they'd like to make a case.
Two things I heard from New York, calling the judge in his case all kinds of names a mistake. The guys in New York believe to go after a judge like that. One. Two, somebody used a line with me this week, and I think this is something you should think about. It's the law of unintended consequences. You don't know who you might be poking the wrong guy.
Yeah.
Or you might be poking a guy who's got a friend who's got something that he might want to poke you back with.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. It can get very ugly. The other thing is, and this is kind of I think the result of social media. The rules have all changed. We've seen it in politics.
Sure.
I mean, stuff that would never happen 20 years ago happens all the time now.
Yeah.
People vilify one another. And I think it's bled off into the underworld as well. Old-time wise guys are looking at this and saying, what the hell is this? What's the point of all of this?
Yeah.
But for younger guys and for that grew up with that social media, oh yeah, man, get out there, tell them.
South Philly loves this.
Well, sure. It's a guy standing on a corner doing a rant. That's what it is.
Yeah, and let me tell you this. He looks like he's having fun doing it.
Yeah.
He's pumping out the material so far, the content. He got paid some good upfront money. We're hearing $100,000. You and I both know everybody thinks these podcasts generate tons of money. They don't, unless you're a big name. And even then, if you're not consistent, that money starts to wane, that kind of thing. So it remains to be seen how this is going to go. But he's not giving up. He's already taped one for this week, from what I'm being told by my sources. Might be controversial. I'm not sure of all the topics going on there. He's going to pick his games, probably going to come out on Thursday for the Thursday night game, do the weekend games, that kind of thing. And his record's been pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, they're posting his record at the end of the weekend. They're not hiding from the record. And, you know, Joey doesn't have the best record with gambling. Even he'll tell you that. But the bottom line is he's doing pretty good, and so is Joe Snuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of the foundation of the show.
Yeah.
And then you build around that. We'll see. I mean, it's very slick. It's very well put together. And if he can come across as a personality and sustain it, could be in for a long run. And it's different in that he's from the world.
Yes.
He's not a guy that left the world.
Right.
Now, you mentioned this before. Is this his way of saying, I'm done now, I want to legitimize myself?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe, or it's something else. We don't know. And I got to say this, I didn't think he was going to do this. We heard about it for 2 or 3 years here, but he stepped into the arena. He's doing his thing, and I got to give him props for that. He's not shying away from it at all, and I'm sure he's doing some things that are not in his wheelhouse, are not comfortable for him.
Yeah.
But he's making it look pretty comfortable.
And even Gravano praised him. Gravano invited him on a show. I doubt very much if Joey will accept the offer, but that
57,000 views on that little 2-minute thing he did about telling Joey to come on.
Yeah.
That would be a hoot if that happened.
I don't think it'll happen, but it was interesting.
I don't think it'll ever happen, but you're right. George, the boss of bosses, has left this world. Matteo DiNardo passed away recently, being chased by authorities for 3 decades. We did a whole thing on him a few months back when he got captured. Your thoughts on his passing?
Well, I think it's almost inevitable. He was going to spend the rest of his life in jail, or he was going to succumb to cancer, which is, you know, getting treatment for the cancer is how he was found.
Right, and led to his capture, yeah.
Right, led to his capture after living a life of, unbelievable what can happen over there. You can stay on the run for that long, but he did. I mean, he was one of the last major players in the Corleonese clan, the most violent, I think, mafia clan in Sicily. The murders of Judges Falcone and Borsellino were orchestrated by that group.
Right.
So yeah, it's the end of an era in a lot of different ways, but it's not surprising. I mean, the guy had serious medical condition, and he succumbed to it.
Yeah, interesting. He's been in jail since, I think, January of 2023. There's been a lot of information about searches that took place, records they were looking for, a book supposedly that contained the names of pretty much everybody he had contact with, that book had been passed along to different people over the years and allegedly was in his possession. But from what we know, they searched his place, they searched other locations that were connected to him, apartments and stuff. And from what I've seen at least reported yet, that has not come out anywhere. I'm assuming that's a little treasure trove they'd like to get their hands on.
Well, I mean, that's always been a question over there. For years and years and years, the Sicilian Mafia had connections with the Christian Democratic Party back in the 80s and all. The question now is, do they still have those kind of political connections? And a diary or a book where he's kept track of his associations could be enlightening in that respect.
Yeah.
But the other question is, if you've got it, do you really want to know it?
Yeah.
You know, does the government want to go there
if
it's going to implicate a lot of different people who are in high places in politics? We'll see.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating story, but it's another story about Sicily. Only in Sicily could that kind of thing happen.
Yeah.
Guys on the run for 30 years.
Is his legacy his criminal activity, the bombings, the killings, that kind of thing, or is his legacy being on the lam for 30 years successfully until he was caught?
Well, I mean, he was not the first one that was on the lam.
Oh, yeah.
His predecessors were as well. I think he's one of the last of the big-time mafia bosses, though, and I think his legacy is he was from that violent clan in Sicily, and it's a new day and a new way of operating.
Yeah. Does he get replaced? Do they replace him with like a triumvirate of people, a ruling body kind of thing, or do we see a new boss of bosses here?
I mean, I think, you know, while we talk about the mafia as a secret society, in Sicily, to a large extent, it really is.
Yeah.
Over here, it's not anymore.
No.
There probably is a boss has already been in place for a while, I would think.
Yeah. Okay. Pretty interesting guy. The way he was caught was really interesting. The way they tracked him down, incredible. He's walking into a clinic, and lo and behold, here come the authorities, and he's locked up and taken away in a very public manner. They were not hiding that arrest. I mean, He was videotaped, photographed, paraded around in handcuffs. Kind of looked stunned when he got hooked up.
Well, you know, it was a good piece of police work, the way they tracked him down, and you know, the medical records, and you know, that socialized medicine helped contribute to that, because everything gets filed, and they were able to find out someone who fit the profile of what he was, and that's how they got him. And it was a good piece of police work in terms of the Italian authorities. You know, and I think at the end of the day, he passed away, and probably, I mean, I don't know the guy.
Yeah.
Rather than spending 30 years in prison, he probably would rather go out the way he went out.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is probably a better way. He was a young guy, too, in his early 60s.
Right.
Yeah. And he spent 30 years of that in hiding. So
in hiding, but living well.
Oh, yeah, from what I saw.
Living well.
The vino, the food, the place where he lived, apparently very nice, kind of set
up. Nice clothes, pretty women,
and he, you know, he still did his business at the same time.
Absolutely.
Incredible. All right, George, coming up the end of November next month, we have the 20-year anniversary of the murder of Johnny Casasanto in South Philly, murdered in his own home. Supposed to be a mob hit from what we've been told. Your thoughts on 2 decades now passing and no one's been caught?
Yeah, the murder of Johnny Gonks. Listen, I think authorities have always had suspects in that case, never had enough to put it together. And as we said at the top of the show here, it never goes away. It's just, you know, there's no statute of limitations on murder. The thing about the Gonks hit was, from everything we've been told, it's a combination of business and personal.
Yeah.
I mean, he stepped on a lot of toes for a lot of different reasons. And if you want to talk about suspects, there's probably as many suspects as there were bullets fired that night.
Yeah. To come into somebody's home like that and do it personal, basically from what we've been, you know, we learned through investigators at the time and still to this day, he let somebody in the house, turned his back, walked towards the kitchen, and got shot in the back of the head.
Yeah, I mean, he knew the shooter. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's the ultimate betrayal. You know, somebody let you into their house and you're there to kill them.
Yeah.
There was no break-in, no forced entry. So yeah, he knew who he was dealing with. And again, was it a business? Were they there to discuss business and they popped them?
Yeah.
Or was it something else?
Yeah, and I mean, there was a whole bunch of stuff around about he wanted to join the Gambino crime family in New York. John Alite talked about that a little bit in your book.
Right.
That kind of stuff, that rubbed people the wrong way. There was some womanizing around town that rubbed people the wrong way. I just think his brashness, his cockiness.
And there were drugs too.
Yeah, too. And his willingness to engage in a little fisticuffs when he had to, all of those things we heard were reasons for his demise.
Yeah. No, you know, he was a genuine tough guy, no doubt about that.
Yes.
And he wasn't afraid to stand up for what he thought was, you know, his rights. And I think he ended up stepping on a lot of toes. And it reached a point, given all the different things that were going on, that the supposition is people in power decided he's got to go.
Yeah, they've had enough and they're going to step to it. And listen, there's some information about 3 guys being seen down the block, standing under a street light in front of a market, half a block away from on Durford Street.
Security videos from people's houses.
Yeah, things like that. And I mean, they actually, I believe, named one of these guys in a hearing in New Jersey on the Borgata case.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of fodder about who did this, but no arrests. We just had a big mob indictment 3 years ago. Yeah. We thought there was going to be some mob murders in there. There wasn't. My understanding, from what I'm being told, is the Department of Justice did not think that was a strong enough case down in Washington and did not give the approval to Philadelphia authorities to go ahead with that.
Yeah, I mean, and it sends out a signal to the investigators. If the top brass is not interested anymore, why spin your wheels? Go do something else. I think the Philadelphia mob, has benefited from that particular approach. There are more important things to do now, and I don't know that anybody is going to spend a lot of time trying to solve these unsolved murders that are 20 years old, unless an informant or somebody flips and steps forward and is able to provide serious information.
And a serious look at the numbers in Philadelphia about the number of guns taken away, the carjackings, the murders, everything else that's gone on in Philadelphia in terms of violence the last few years. Why put your money there?
Exactly.
Why put your resources there? As Eddie Jacobs liked to say, that's a waste of taxpayer money.
Exactly, and I think that's permeated through the whole system now. You know, what's the priority? And these guys are not priority anymore. So you've got well, we got 4 or 5 unsolved murders that are sitting out there that maybe will always be unsolved murders.
Yeah, and I hear guys in New York shooting their mouth off about how small the Philadelphia family is. The Philadelphia family is as big as it's been in a long time right now. A couple guys are in jail, Dominic Randy, Steve Mazzone, Sonny Mazzone. But, you know, they're going to get out in the next 4 or 5 years. They're still, at least numbers-wise, pretty strong.
Yeah, there are guys out there. The question is, what are those guys doing, or are they legitimate? They're guys who are going in a different direction now.
Yeah, make money, not headline.
There you go.
There you go, your favorite line.
All right.
All right, George, I've heard a lot of opinions about Joey Merlino's new podcast. Most of them that I'm hearing is stay away from the rats thing, stick to the sports bookmaking and a few mob tales, and you'll be better off in the end.
Yeah, and I think he's got that information. It's just a question of how he's going to present it.
Okay, see you next time.